Welcome to the History Uncovered, where we illuminate the shadows of the past with the light of historical truth. Today, we embark on an extraordinary journey into the realm where medieval myths transform into documented reality. Our video explores medieval myths that were actually true, revealing stories that challenge conventional wisdom about the ancient world. Stay with us until the end as we uncover evidence that will forever change how you view medieval history. First, the Viking berserker warriors. Myth meets battlefield reality. The frozen mists of Scandinavia carried tales of warriors who fought in states of supernatural fury and rage. Medieval chronicles describe Viking berserkers as invincible fighters who felt no pain and possessed inhuman strength during battle. For centuries, scholars dismissed these accounts as exaggerated propaganda designed to frighten enemies and glorify Nordic culture. The notion of warriors entering trance-like states seemed too fantastical to be rooted in any historical reality. However, archaeological excavations in Norwegian burial grounds revealed skeletal remains that told a different and darker story. Warriors' bones showed evidence of catastrophic injuries sustained during combat, wounds that should have been immediately fatal. The skeletal trauma patterns indicated these fighters continued battling even after receiving devastating blows to vital areas. Modern forensic analysis confirmed that some warriors fought on despite suffering injuries that would incapacitate ordinary soldiers. Toxicology studies on preserved tissue samples uncovered traces of powerful natural hallucinogens derived from local mushroom species. The Vikings had discovered psychoactive fungi that altered pain perception and induced states of aggressive fearlessness. Chemical residues found in drinking horns and ceremonial vessels matched compounds known to produce dissociative effects and rage. These substances allowed warriors to enter combat in altered mental states where normal physical limitations seemed to vanish. Historical manuscripts from monasteries across Europe corroborated these findings with detailed descriptions of berserker battle tactics. Monks recorded encounters with Viking raiders who appeared immune to sword strikes and showed no fear of death. The archaeological evidence aligned perfectly with written accounts that had been considered mere myth for generations. Modern science validated what medieval chroniclers had witnessed but could not explain. With their contemporary understanding, the berserker tradition was not folklore but a sophisticated psychological warfare technique rooted in biochemical manipulation. These warriors were real, their methods were documented, and their legendary ferocity was grounded in historical fact. Second, medieval medicine. Ancient cures confirmed by modern science. The stone walls of medieval monasteries housed gardens where monks cultivated plants according to ancient healing traditions. These herbalists created remedies based on knowledge passed down through generations. Treatments modern doctors once dismissed entirely. Medical historians long characterized medieval medicine as primitive superstition mixed with dangerous ignorance and harmful practices. The assumption was that effective medical treatment only emerged after the scientific revolution transformed European understanding. Yet research laboratories across the world began testing medieval remedies using contemporary pharmaceutical analysis and clinical methodology. Scientists discovered that certain ancient prescriptions contained genuine antibacterial and anti-inflammatory compounds with measurable therapeutic effects. A 9th century Anglo-Saxon manuscript called Bald's Leech Book described a treatment for eye infections using garlic and wine. When researchers recreated this exact recipe in controlled laboratory conditions, it proved effective against antibiotic-resistant bacteria. The medieval formula killed modern superbugs that conventional antibiotics could not eliminate, stunning the medical research community. This thousand-year-old remedy outperformed cutting-edge pharmaceutical compounds in treating dangerous bacterial infections. Further investigation revealed that medieval healers understood wound care principles that modern medicine only rediscovered in recent decades. They used honey as an antibacterial agent, maggot therapy for cleaning infected tissue, and willow bark for pain relief. These treatments were not lucky accidents but represented systematic medical knowledge based on careful observation and experimentation. Medieval physicians conducted what we would now recognize as clinical trials, documenting patient outcomes and refining treatments. Monastic libraries preserved detailed medical texts describing surgical procedures, diagnostic techniques, and pharmaceutical preparations of remarkable sophistication. The monks who maintained these traditions were not ignorant mystics but serious practitioners of early scientific medicine. Modern pharmaceutical companies now study medieval manuscripts, searching for forgotten remedies that might yield new treatments for contemporary diseases. The wisdom of medieval healers has proven far more valuable than modern arrogance initially allowed. Third, the sunken city of Veneta. When Atlantis became archaeology, Baltic fishermen told stories of a magnificent city that vanished beneath the waves in a single catastrophic night. The legend spoke of Veneta, a wealthy trading port whose streets were paved with gold and whose markets sold goods from distant lands. Scholars classified these tales alongside Atlantis and other mythical lost civilizations, beautiful stories with no basis in reality. The idea of an entire medieval city disappearing into the sea seemed like pure fantasy invented by imaginative storytellers. Marine archaeologists working off the coast of northern Germany discovered anomalous sonar readings indicating massive structural formations beneath the sand. Initial surveys revealed stone foundations, harbor works, and what appeared to be an extensive urban grid pattern. Diving teams descended into the murky Baltic waters and found themselves swimming through the preserved remains of medieval streets. The underwater excavation uncovered building foundations, warehouse structures, merchant quarters, and a sophisticated harbor complex. Artifacts recovered from the site included coins, pottery, jewelry, and trade goods from across medieval Europe and beyond. The sheer volume and variety of materials confirmed this had been a major commercial center of international significance. Historical records from neighboring cities mentioned trade relationships with a powerful Baltic port that suddenly ceased all communication. These documents aligned perfectly with the legend's timeline, describing a city that prospered and then mysteriously vanished. Geological studies revealed that the area experienced catastrophic storm surges and land subsidence during the medieval period. The combination of extreme weather events and shifting coastlines could indeed have submerged an entire settlement. Dendrochronology dating of preserved wooden structures pinpointed the city's destruction to the exact decade mentioned in legends. The myth had preserved accurate historical memory across centuries through oral tradition and folk stories. Veneta was real, its wealth was genuine, and its tragic fate was not exaggerated by medieval storytellers. The legendary city that scholars dismissed as fantasy now stands as testament to the historical accuracy of folklore. Fourth, the Great Plague Chronicles. DNA evidence validates ancient records. Medieval manuscripts described plague outbreaks with vivid details of symptoms, death tolls, and the devastating speed of infection. Chroniclers wrote of the Black Death sweeping through cities like divine judgment, killing millions across Europe in years. Modern historians questioned whether these accounts were reliable or whether medieval writers exaggerated the plague's impact for dramatic effect. The death toll figures seemed impossibly high, and the described symptoms appeared too varied to represent a single disease. Genetic researchers extracted DNA from teeth of plague victims buried in medieval mass graves across multiple European locations. The ancient genetic material revealed the presence of Yersinia pestis, the bacterium responsible for bubonic and pneumonic plague. Genomic sequencing allowed scientists to reconstruct the exact strain of plague that ravaged medieval Europe with unprecedented precision. The genetic evidence matched perfectly with the symptoms and transmission patterns described in historical documents. Analysis of DNA from victims in different cities showed that the plague spread along medieval trade routes exactly as chroniclers recorded. The pathogen moved from port to port, city to city, following the commercial networks that connected medieval civilization. Mortality rate calculations based on cemetery excavations confirmed that medieval death toll estimates were actually conservative rather than exaggerated. In some regions, archaeological evidence suggested even higher fatality rates than historical records indicated. The genetic timeline of plague mutations aligned with documented outbreak waves that swept across Europe in successive centuries. Medieval chroniclers had accurately tracked not just one pandemic but multiple distinct plague events across generations. Climate data reconstructed from tree rings and ice cores corroborated medieval accounts of environmental conditions that facilitated plague transmission. The cold, wet weather described in chronicles created perfect conditions for flea populations and disease spread. DNA evidence transformed medieval plague chronicles from questionable narratives into precise historical records of biological catastrophe. The monks and scribes who documented these horrors were reliable witnesses to one of history's greatest tragedies. Fifth, impossible architecture, medieval engineering beyond belief. Stone cathedrals soared toward heaven with vaulted ceilings and massive stained glass windows that seemed to defy gravity. Medieval builders erected structures of such complexity that later generations questioned whether they were humanly possible to construct. Architects and engineers proposed theories that medieval cathedrals must have taken many centuries to build using primitive techniques. Some suggested that later renovators must have replaced original simpler structures with the magnificent buildings we see today. Advanced 3D scanning technology and structural analysis revealed that medieval cathedrals were built exactly as historical records claimed. The engineering calculations embedded in these structures demonstrated mathematical sophistication that rivaled modern architectural planning. Stonemasons worked without modern cranes yet lifted blocks weighing several tons to heights exceeding 40 meters. Their techniques utilized complex pulley systems, counterweights, and leverage principles that modern engineers are only now beginning to understand. Cathedral foundations incorporated advanced drainage systems and load distribution methods that protected structures from settling and water damage. These buildings stood for centuries because medieval engineers understood geology, hydrology, and material science at practical levels. Acoustic analysis revealed that cathedral architects designed spaces with specific sound properties to amplify religious ceremonies perfectly. The stone chambers functioned as precisely tuned acoustic instruments without any electronic amplification or modern technology. Construction timelines documented in church records showed that some cathedrals were completed in decades rather than centuries. Medieval societies mobilized resources and labor forces with organizational efficiency that modern project managers find impressive. The mathematical precision of Gothic arches and flying buttresses demonstrated that medieval builders used geometric principles now taught in engineering schools. These structures were not accidents but carefully calculated solutions to complex architectural challenges. Medieval engineering achievements were not primitive attempts that later required correction but sophisticated accomplishments that modern builders study with admiration. The legends of impossible architecture were not legends at all but accurate descriptions of genuine medieval genius. The journey through these 5 extraordinary medieval myths reveals a fundamental truth about our understanding of history and human achievement. The history uncovered has shown you that the stories our ancestors preserved were often more accurate than modern skepticism allowed. From Viking warriors whose battle fury was biochemically induced to medical knowledge that saves lives today, the medieval world was far more sophisticated than we imagined. These confirmed myths challenge us to reconsider what other legends might contain kernels of historical truth. If you found this exploration enlightening, please support the history uncovered by liking this video, sharing your thoughts in the comments, and subscribing for more revelations from the past. Together we continue uncovering the truths that time tried to hide.